Dave and Ashley from the Naked Marriage Podcast have a new book called Naked and Healthy. In this book, they uncover the lifestyle your mind, body, spirit, and marriage need. They share their own health and marriage battles to reveal why your personal well-being and the health of your marriage are inextricably connected. Dave and Ashley are a part of the XO Marriage and the XO Podcast Network. They are such an incredible couple, and their message about living honestly with your spouse is life-changing. Get their new book at nakedandhealthy.com. That's nakedandhealthy.com. Welcome to the MarriageToday podcast. I'm Jimmy Evans. This is my wife, Karen, and we're talking today about returning to intimacy. This is a teaching that I do, a series of teachings that I do, and this will be the next upcoming podcast too. We're talking about this issue. But in order to understand intimacy, Karen, and so a lot of people struggle, I did, in our marriage, understanding intimacy. Every single married couple can experience true intimacy, but intimacy is experienced on 4 levels. Jesus was asked the question, what's the most important commandment? And Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. We are not one-dimensional beings. And a lot of times when people think of intimacy, they think of sex. It's just physical. Sex is only 25% of the equation of intimacy, but it's mental. Jesus said, your mind, the number one reason that God gave us our minds was to love Him. But the number 2 reason was to love each other. The number 1 reason that God gave us our bodies was to love Him, but the second is to love each other. And you take any dimension of your being, and all the dimensions of our being were created to love. We will never be fulfilled as human beings until we're loving.
Well, and I think it's a great point, because without love,
Yeah.
So why do you think it is, though, in today's society, it's so hard for people to just have that simple understanding to love?
Yeah. Well, I think that marriage is a mystery in our society. We are the most relationally ignorant culture probably ever, and there's been some bad cultures in world history, but I'm saying we're just very relationally ignorant, and we've strayed, and that's the reason for this teaching. But what I'm talking about, value, energy, sacrifice, and trust, okay? When you look at intimacy, where does it come from? And I literally spell the word invest. It's intimacy necessitates value, energy, sacrifice, and trust, and that comes from Genesis 2, 24 and 25. But value, let's talk for just a minute about emotional intimacy. So one of the questions that we could ask is, how did we learn how to talk to each other and be each other's safe place? Okay, we value each other's emotions. Okay, it has to begin with value. So I may not agree, but you said to me many times, Karen, before we had a good marriage, you would say, can't you just validate how I feel? And I would say something like, well, I would, but that's stupid. It's just no normal person would think that.
It kind of shuts down the conversation.
It shuts down it's shaming. It's if you don't feel like me, you can't. It's not valid. Okay. So first of all, you have to say that's valid. I understand that's very important. I understand how you feel. Energy means I'm going to work hard at trying to understand you. I'm not just going to reject you. God says, for this cause a man will leave his father and mother. You have to prioritize it. You have to value it. And it says, and cleave unto his wife. That means work. Marriage is work. To be intimate, you have to work. To have emotional intimacy, it means I'm not just going to sit here and listen to you. I'm going to work hard. This is what you did when you dated. You talked, you worked hard at trying to understand each other. You were very empathetic. Empathy is huge. Sacrifice, it says they two shall become one flesh. It means you have to sacrifice meanness for we-ness. You have to sacrifice of yourself to become a couple, and that means I'm not just going to sit here and talk to you. I will sacrifice my need to be right.
I think it's important for there to be a feeling there's safety, that you're not going to disrespect or, like you said, shame me for expressing how I'm feeling, or it comes from both sides, because women can be just as, you're going to be nagging, or you're going to be treating them like a child, like you're the mother and they're the child, or, rolling your eyes, and like, that kind of thing. It just turns people off. You don't want to open up with them, and so, treat people the way you want to be treated.
That's right.
And, consider, their feelings first before you consider yours.
And that's where the trust comes in. It's value, energy, sacrifice, and trust. And the trust is, I'm going to be a consistent, safe place for you, where you know that you can trust me, because you're not going to be honest with someone you don't trust.
Right.
And sometimes you'll have men or women, and they'll say, why don't you talk to me anymore? Well, I don't trust you. That's what she said to me. Early in our marriage, I was verbally abusive at times. I was not a good husband. And years later, you told me, I never confided things in you because you weren't safe. And I wasn't. So if you want your spouse to open up to you, you're going to have to be patient and kind and loving, humble. When you're wrong, to say you're sorry. And that way you build this trust, and that's where intimacy comes from. Well, if you enjoy the podcast, we would love for you to leave a review. We're going to go to this teaching right now, Investing in Intimacy. We're going to talk about the 4 areas of intimacy, and we're going to use an acronym, INVEST. Intimacy necessitates value, energy, sacrifice, and trust. That's the word invest. If we're going to be intimate, it means we must have value, energy, sacrifice, and trust. Let's begin with mental intimacy, and we're just going to apply our acronym here. So mental intimacy, the ability to share thoughts on a deep level and to successfully find a point of agreement on essential issues. Now think about the importance of that related to marriage. The ability really to share any thought. Remember, intimacy means inner closeness, unhindered access. That I have access to your thoughts. There's nothing that you're keeping from me, and there's nothing toxic in our relationship that we can't share. Okay, mental intimacy. Number 1, we're talking about intimacy necessitates value. I value your thoughts. Your thoughts are important to me. Well, I counseled a guy, I was doing a seminar someplace, and this guy came and talked to me, and he was just as dumb as I was when I got married. He reminded me of me. And he had the worst marriage, and he said, my wife's goofy. She's just goofy. And he says, every time she says something, I just tell her, you're goofy. And he said, so he's talking, he had 3 boys, and in front of his boys, he said it. Then his boys started saying it to her. And every time she would say something, the boys would say, Mom, you're goofy, you're goofy. And then at the end, so he's sharing about his marriage and how goofy his wife was. And then he says, and we have terrible sex. Now, what do you think that she needs to do to make that right? And I said, you're the problem. And he said, what? I said, let me just tell you something right now. I said, every time your wife shares something with you, I said, first of all, you have you and 3 boys in the house. Thank God that there's a woman in that house. And I said, you desperately need her. And what she's saying to you is not goofy, it's right, and you need to listen to it. And I said, just because it's not the way you think doesn't mean it's wrong. We are 2 halves of a whole. Man has a man brain, woman has a woman brain. Together they make a God brain. But you can't have it if you don't respect each other. When you devalue and reject the thoughts of your spouse, intimacy is out the window. And I said, I want you to go home, and I want you to get in bed with your wife tonight, and I want you to apologize to her. He said, what? And I said, you are wrong. You should never again tell her she's goofy. Every time she talks, you should say, wow, that's the smartest thing I've ever heard in my life. I don't understand it. I'm going to have to meditate on it a while, but it's awesome. And you tell your boys that you've been wrong and never to say that to your wife again. Well, so the next day at the seminar, he came, big old smile on his face. He said, well, we were up till 3 in the morning. And I said, talking or having sex? He said, both. Because he got in bed and said to her, I am so sorry. I had no idea what I was saying to you was doing what it was doing. But Jimmy Evans told me that I was wrong. I want you to know that I'm sorry, and never again will I call you goofy. She bawled her eyes out. And then they were intimate. They now counsel people in marriage. They are the most awesome. I'm so proud of them because, he just took it on the chin. He just said, okay, I'm wrong. He went, he repented. They have helped so many people in their marriages. But think about your spouse is sharing something with you, your eye contact, countenance. Somebody can be sharing something with you, don't say anything wrong, it's like, And you just, or you're just not tuned in, and you know that they're not listening to you. Well, if you don't value what I'm saying, we're not going to have a successful conversation. And what it means is, because I know you don't value what I'm saying, I don't want to share anything with you. So my spouse won't share with me. What happens when they share? Okay, here's the second. Energy. I will work hard to listen and understand what you're saying. I'm going to have to, because you're different than me, and because you come from a different perspective, I'm not just going to be able to hear simply and understand it because you're a different person. There are 4 money languages. Kenneth Doyle, a financial psychologist, University of Minnesota, he discovered that we have different money languages. We see money differently. You can look at a dollar and see it completely differently, but it's all legitimate. Well, there is a driver that means money is success. Drivers see money, to them it means success. They buy houses and cars and all these things, and they feel successful, and that's just the way they see money. Analytics see money as security. They see a dollar bill and they think, I'm going to stack them up and that's going to make me feel better about life. Okay? They're amiables, and to amiable, money is love. It just means we have the ability to have a good life and go eat pizza together. So money is love. There are expressives, and to an expressive, money is acceptance. I can buy the right clothes. I can join the right clubs. I can get into the right social groups, because to them, money means relationships. So there's drivers, there's analytics, there's amiables, and there's expressives. Karen is an analytic, and I'm an amiable. Okay, so we couldn't talk about money when we first got married. I mean, this was a toxic issue in our relationship that we could not talk about, because Karen wanted to save everything and I wanted to spend it. It was just a tug of war in our relationship. And she called me a spendthrift, and I called her a tightwad. And we just couldn't talk about it. I mean, it made me so mad when she called me a spendthrift. And I told Karen, I said, you're the type of person, you're going to die one day with all the money in the mattress and no one will like you. And she said, well, at least I'll have a mattress. I mean, So now here's what we know today. We make great decisions together. We make great decisions. Because when we're talking about money, I'm working to understand the way her mind thinks, and Karen conserves. That's just the way that she thinks. The way I think is, I want to conserve also. I like paying cash. I like saving money. I think that's the smart thing to do. But I also like to enjoy our lives. Okay. So here's the point. You are probably different in your money languages. You're better if you're different. Because if you're the same, you have the same weakness. See, if you're both amiables, you probably have a lot of fun, but you don't have much money. If you're analytics, you have a lot of money, you just don't have much fun. So if you're different than one another, it just means you have a balance to one another, like Karen and me. We make great financial decisions together. And because we respect that and we work hard to understand each other, it makes a big difference. Another thing is this: all your major needs are different. All the major needs: men need honor, sex, friendship with their wives, and domestic support. Women need security, soft, non-sexual affection, open and honest communication, and leadership from their husbands. We're completely different. So understand, when your spouse is talking to you, if you don't work, if you don't apply yourself, first of all, I value what you're saying. What you're saying is important, and I value you. I know you're very different than me, but I'm not going to roll my eyes. I'm not going to fall asleep. I'm not going to do anything like that. I value what you say, and I'm going to work hard to listen and to understand it. And if I don't understand it, we're going to talk until I do understand it, but I'm going to work. Number 3 is sacrifice. I'm going to sacrifice my need to be right and to be judgmental. When your spouse is sharing with you, you need to understand, it's the old saying, you can either be right or be happy. For some people, they just always have to be right. And they're very judgmental. They very quick with their mouth. This is me. He is very quick. I've never been at a loss for words, and it's not a good thing. I'm just telling you right now. I wish I'd have been at a loss for words many times. But I know what I'm going to say, and what I have to do is restrain that, and sometimes just walk away when it's no big deal and just say, I'm going to be wrong and be happy. I'm just not going to say anything. I'm not going to judge what they say. You don't have to be right. Sometimes you compromise. Sometimes you just
go on with your life knowing that maybe, you're right, they're wrong, but you're not going to say anything. Number 4, trust. I'm going to create a consistent, caring atmosphere in my life where you are free to share any thought. Now listen, I'm your safe place. When something really fantastic happens in your life, or something really terrible happens in your life, you're always going to tell the safest person first. Right? When you're going through something really good or really bad, you're going to talk to the safest person. In our marriage, I was not the safest person. Karen never shared anything with me for the first several years of our marriage because I was an idiot and didn't care, wasn't tuned in, very judgmental, had to be right. And finally, after years of, our marriage being bad, and then I changed and I repented and hung up my golf clubs and began to take care of Karen and to meet her needs and to say I was wrong. And the issue about being naked is it means purity. You can only have intimacy in an atmosphere of purity where you take responsibility for your mistakes and your spouse feels safe. So years later, when I had changed, Karen started sharing things with me, and I said one time to her, how long have you been thinking that? She said, well, for years. And I said, why didn't you tell me before? She said, Jimmy, I didn't trust you. She said, you're just now to a place where I can say something and I can trust you with it.
David and Ashley from the Naked Marriage Podcast have a new book called Naked and Healthy. In this book, they uncover the lifestyle your mind, body, spirit, and marriage need. They share their own health and marriage battles to reveal why your personal well-being and the health of your marriage are inextricably connected. Dave and Ashley are a part of the XO Marriage and the XO Podcast Network. They are such an incredible couple, and their message about living honestly with your spouse is life-changing. Get their new book at nakedandhealthy.com. That's nakedandhealthy.com.
Emotional intimacy, the ability to openly and safely express our emotions in an atmosphere of sensitivity, care, and emotional support. Okay, it's the same thing. Now it's just on an emotional level. We're talking about feelings. Okay, here are the 5 main reasons couples fight. Okay, when it comes down to the reasons that we fight, here they are. Number 1 is work stress. That's interesting. Number 1 reason for fighting is I'm stressed out, I'm tired, I'm stressed out, I've been working, both of us been working. Okay. Number 2, money. Number 3 is children. It's the 3rd reason that couples fight. Number 4 is sex, sexual tension, sexual frustration. Number 5 is housework. Okay, just the house isn't taken care of, you're not doing your job with the house. Work stress, money, children, sex, and housework. But here's the real reason that we fight. You don't care. You don't care about the kids. You don't care about the fact that I'm one taking care of the kids all day long. You don't care about the fact that the house looks bad and that you're not doing anything to help me out here. You don't care about how hard I'm working and about the sacrifices that I'm making and blah, blah, blah. It's just you don't care. Karen, a lot of our biggest fights always happened in the car driving. And they happened because Karen would say, well, Karen, I scared her to death. I mean, the way I drove. But I'm the greatest driver in the world. All my relatives, race car drivers in my mind, my dreams. But so I'd be driving, and Karen, and Karen's very animated. She's not a quiet passenger, and she's a backseat driver, A, and B, grabbing the dash, screaming, putting her feet up on the dash, all that kind of stuff. And so it just would grate. I'd get in a car and it would just grate on me. She'd be over there griping. And so one day I thought to myself, I don't care how she feels. Now, when we started dating, I did. When we started dating, I picked her up in my car, and I was so careful how I drove. I remember thinking, I don't want to upset her. I want her to like me. I want her to fall in love with me. So I'm going to be super careful how I drive. And I was. That went out the window. And she would sit over there and she would complain the entire time I was driving. I didn't care. And the day came when I slowed down. And Karen is the type of a person that this is men, I know some of the men will understand this. One stoplight, she'll say, you could have made that. The next stoplight, she'll say, you're trying to kill us? You ran through that stoplight. So what I've learned is there is no right answer. Okay, so some of the men are getting some healing out of this. But what I've learned is this: life is better when I care. I care that I'm scaring you. I care that I'm upsetting you. If I see that this is upsetting you, I care about your feelings. See, we always care about each other's feelings when we first date and start relating, don't we? I mean, we always do. You're extremely empathetic when you first meet a person. And empathy means to put yourself in another person's shoes. See, here's a great thought. I wonder what it's like to be married to me. Listen to this one. I wonder what it's like to be on the other side of my mouth. You ever thought about that one? Kind of a scary thought sometimes. But on the other side of my mouth is a person's heart, is a person's feelings. You fall in love for two reasons. Number one, you admire something in another person. And number two, you like the way they make you feel about yourself. You don't fall in love with the person that makes you feel bad about yourself. You fall in love with a person because they do something positive to your emotions. I care about how you feel. Number two, I'm going to work hard to be sensitive to you and to meet your emotional needs. Well, I just mentioned the 4 major needs of a man, 4 major needs of a woman. Okay, let me talk about the first. Honor is the mega need of men. It's the mega need. It's the need above all needs. Security is the mega need of women. When you're meeting our primary need, when a man feels honored and a woman feels secure, you're half the way there of meeting their emotional needs. When a man feels disrespected and a woman feels insecure, it is devastating to their emotional state. It puts them literally into a state of hostility. When a woman feels insecure, she's having to take care of herself. She's afraid, not because she's not a woman of God, but she's vigilant. She's having to take care of the issues that she shouldn't have to be taken care of. Nothing makes a woman feel as insecure as a selfless, detached man. Nothing makes a woman feel more secure than a selfless, sacrificial man. We hear through our deepest needs. Literally, we hear. So everything a man says to a woman has to be encrypted with the language of security. When you're speaking to a woman, regardless of what the conversation's about, here's what she wants to hear. I'm yours first, and to my hurt, I'll take care of you. Work is second. Everything else is second. You're first. And I'll take care of you before I'll take care of me. And you won't have to say it twice. You won't have to nag. You won't have to beg. It says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. He gave himself. And in that spirit, I will take care of you. She's in heaven. That's what a woman wants to hear. And in every conversation, you have to know that she's not just hearing your words, she's hearing your attitude. Do you care about me? Do you understand how important security is? Same is true of a man. When a woman is speaking to a man, regardless of what the conversation is, if you're going to meet his emotional needs and be his best friend, he's got to hear in your voice, I believe in you. You're a good man. You've got what it takes. He's in heaven. That's the mega need of men, emotionally. Number 3, I will sacrifice, this is sacrifice, I'll sacrifice the need for you to feel the way I do for your needs to be valid or for me to meet your needs. See, Karen and I just have different emotions most of the time. When you're meeting your spouse's needs in marriage, rarely will you have that need at that time. Rarely. When Karen has a need that I'm meeting, I don't have that need. So what the worst marriages in the world are, you have to feel the way I feel before your feelings are valid. And you have to feel the way I feel before I'll respond to that need. But in a good marriage, what it means is, I may not feel the way you feel right now, but because you feel the way you do, I'm going to come out of my world into your world, and I'm going to take care of your need. I'm going to sacrifice my typical inclination to be selfish and detached. And it's the way men and women both are emotionally if we're not careful. Lastly, trust. I will build an atmosphere where you're safe to share any feeling and to know it's valued and supported. And here's the main thing. My feelings may not be right, but they're real. I'm going to say half of my feelings aren't right. You know what I'm saying? I may be feeling jealous. I may be feeling insecure. I may be feeling angry. I may be feeling down. And, you know, they might not be right. But I need to share. And when I'm sharing my feelings, I don't want to be judged for it. Sometimes I just need somebody to listen to me and say, yeah, I understand that. That's my safe place. It's where I can share any feeling and understand I'm safe to share that feeling. And I won't be judged, and I won't be scolded, and I won't be shamed because of it.
Hey, this is Brent Evans with XO Marriage, and I want to thank you for listening to the Marriage Today podcast. We believe your marriage has a 100% chance of success if you do it God's way. If you enjoyed today's teaching and want to keep learning, hey, subscribe to the Marriage Today podcast and take some time to leave us a review. Your reviews help us spread the word and can encourage someone else in need. For more great marriage content, check out xomarriage.com, where you can see all of our marriage building resources, articles, and live events.